Who would have thought? I was just an ordinary college student, and somehow I ended up transmigrating into a duchess. Then let's set a small goal first. Spend 100 million of his money, then divorce my deadweight husband. See that? How can a person change so much? The maids were all chattering noisily. How can someone not work and just sleep all day in luxury? One maid said indignantly. And the hateful person they were talking about was me, the mistress of this lavish palace. Aila. But just a week ago, I was only a girl who slipped after drinking and missed my footing. Then, for no reason at all, I transmigrated into a novel as an ordinary college student. The good news was that I'd read this novel. The bad news was that I wasn't just a side character. I was the villain's wife. A complete tragedy. My villainous husband, Claude, hadn't paid me any attention at all in the years since we got married. He hadn't even spent our first night with me. And yet, when his rebellion failed, I was the one who got dragged down with him and lost my head. Every time I think of that plot, I just want to shout, "Heaven, change my fate." Whatever Claude does has nothing to do with innocent me. Aila, I absolutely have to divorce him. I swore that on the very first day after I woke up, I immediately asked around for news of Claude. Divorce-me, Claude. I rushed into the study and said it straight to his face. I don't want anything. I just want a divorce. If you don't say anything, I'll take that as agreement. Thinking of the horrible way I'd die in the future, I wanted to settle it quickly. As soon as I finished speaking, I stood up, ready to leave in style. But Claude suddenly stood up and grabbed my arm. "You seem to have misunderstood. I never intended to let you go, not even in death." Claude said it in a chilling voice. After leaving the study, I hurried back to my room. The straight-back composure I'd forced myself to keep the whole way collapsed instantly. That scared me to death. His eyes were full of killing intent. I thought I was about to be murdered. Thinking back on the cold way, I just walked away. I could only admire myself. It looked like I wasn't afraid of power, but really, I was just too scared to do anything else. So why won't he divorce me? I thought bitterly. My father married me off to pay his debts, and Claude just happened to need a wife who wouldn't threaten his authority. So me, the daughter of a fallen count, became the perfect bargaining chip. What was the point of maintaining a marriage like that? Not to mention, we'd never even really lived as husband and wife. We'd only met a handful of times. He even ignored my misery and let the servants treat me cruelly. And I'm supposed to get beheaded because of a husband like that? No matter how I think about it, I'm completely innocent. I'm way too pitiful. I clawed at my hair in frustration. Misfortune really does pick on the unlucky. I have to find a way to make Claude despise me. I have to get divorced. Just then, a maid suddenly pushed the door open and said, "Madam, I'm coming in." A maid in such a rule-bound, aristocratic household just announces herself and comes in. That alone showed how miserable Aila's life had been before. I realized it immediately. Sure enough, the maid who came in was arrogant and overbearing, questioning me as if she were the mistress of the house. "Why didn't you eat dinner? I'm exhausted serving the Duke." "Are you skipping meals because you've got nothing better to do?" As expected of someone from a nearly ruined count's family, Madam doesn't even understand basic manners. The maid kept criticizing me from on high. From her attitude alone, I could guess how painful Aila's life here had been. She'd actually been abused by the servants. Rage rose in me instantly. "What's your name?" I stood up and looked down at her with the advantage of my height. The maid immediately lost some of her nerve. "Jayan," she answered hesitantly. Then she puffed herself up and threatened me anyway. "What are you trying to do? Hurry up and apologize to me." Apologize? I was so furious I laughed. With a cold snort, I picked up a vase and hurled it at her. "Oh dear, my hand slipped. Your aggressive attitude frightened me so much," I said in a mocking tone. "You almost hurt me. If your ridiculous words startled me so badly that I was nearly injured, then as the mistress of this house, how should I deal with a servant like you, an ungrateful thing who keeps pushing her luck?" I said coldly. "You'll have to pay the price for insulting the Duchess of this house. Now hurry up and clean up the broken glass." I folded my arms and stared at the flustered Jayan. "You're dismissed, Jayan. The only thing you're fit to do here is pick up trash. But employing a useless maid like you is a total loss for me." I smiled as I said it. The moment I finished speaking, Jayan turned and ran away crying. "If I can't deal with Claude, can I at least deal with you?" Just thinking about how Aila must have been bullied before made me snort angrily. I have to break the current situation. I can't keep being ignored. Only if things get worse will Claude possibly divorce me. From now on, I'm throwing away the dignity of a duchess and working even harder to indulge myself in food, drink, and pleasure. Just wait and see, Claude, I told myself. Over the next few days, the Duke's residence became livelier than ever. And it was all thanks to me, a duchess who hadn't gotten out of bed for 2 whole days. Thanks to this awful feudal system, I got to enjoy the privilege of not leaving my bed at all. Just ring a bell, and everything will be brought to me there. This was exactly the mysterious, lazy persona I wanted to create so Claude would hate me. At the sound of the bell, the new maid hurried in. "I'm the new personal maid assigned to you, Lania." Lania introduced herself nervously. "There may not be much time, but I'm still counting on you, Lania," I said in an easy tone. But Lania looked as if she'd been threatened, her eyes filling with tears and fear. "I absolutely won't make you angry. I really want to stay by your side for a long time, Adam." Lania hurried to show her sincerity. I cut her off. "That's enough for introductions. Have a chef bring some desserts, and make me a shopping list while you're at it." Lania stared at the desserts already piled on my bed in shock. "More desserts? Can you really finish them all?" "Of course," I said firmly. Inside, I was absolutely delighted. After all, it wasn't my money being spent. Luxury and extravagance go hand in hand. In this month, I'm going to squander Claude's fortune, unless he agrees to divorce me. This kind of life was practically heaven. I rolled around on the enormous bed, able to reach delicious sweets at any moment. If I'm acting like this, Claude should be furious by now, right? I lay on the bed, chewing and thinking. The next second, a maid came in to report, "The Duke wishes to see you. He says he has something to discuss with you, madam." I shot upright. Great. Time to reel in the net. I gave myself an approving nod in my heart. "Let's go." I scrambled out of bed at once and headed out with the maid in high spirits. The thought that I might finally be getting divorced had me practically glowing. Lania hurried after me and asked worriedly, "Madam, can you really go by yourself?" "Of course," I said confidently. Thinking that I might be divorced any minute now, I couldn't stop the corners of my mouth from lifting. When I reached the study, a maid was already waiting outside. As soon as she saw me, she said, "The Duke is waiting for you inside." I pushed open the door and asked with a smile, "I heard you were looking for me?" With a face like that, and yet he insists on dying in a rebellion. What a waste of beauty. Looking at Claude's face, I sighed inwardly in regret. "Why did you call for me?" I asked, secretly full of anticipation. "Are you prepared for the ball?" Claude asked with a smile. "What ball?" I froze. "The birthday ball for the amnesiac prince in 10 days, Claude said. The novel hadn't described that ball in much detail, but 6 months after that event was when Claude would rebel. I searched my memory of the plot. Wait, did that mean he had no intention of getting rid of me before the ball? I frowned. I've acted this outrageously, and he still won't divorce me? I ground my teeth and asked, "Aren't you angry? Everyone says I'm extravagant, wasting money recklessly as the lady of the house." To my surprise, Claude scoffed and said, "This is extravagant? There's far more money you could spend." Meaning, my spending hadn't even made a dent. I knew he was rich, but just how rich was he? To say something like that? I kept awkwardly searching for another angle. Lately, I haven't fulfilled any of a duchess's duties. "If you don't want to, then don't. I'm not forcing you," Claude said indifferently. "But don't bring up divorce again." Claude stared at me darkly as he spoke. So in the end, I still didn't get divorced today. I wasn't even allowed to say the word divorce anymore. Not only had all my efforts gone to waste, I'd actually gone backward. Looks like I have no choice but to use that method. I thought to myself in secret, I'm going to run away. If Claude won't let me go, fine. I'll just escape on my own. Knowing the terrible fate awaiting the Duke's household, I had to flee. If he won't divorce me, and yet he never even comes to the bedroom, then why? But in a way, that worked in my favor too. I sat on the bed, thinking it over. Then it hit me, the sooner I carried out my escape plan, the better. The whole point was surprise. So I'd leave right now. Escape first, then sell some jewelry and dresses for travel funds. I leapt to my feet. The moment I decided, I acted. I tore down the curtains and ripped up the bed sheets. Then tied them to the iron bars. Perfect. Nice and sturdy. I threw the rope down hard. It was the time when the nights were changing shifts, perfect for slipping out through the back gate. Holding onto the rope, I carefully lowered myself. The rope swayed, and so did my terrified heart. I glanced down. It was still pretty high. I was scared. I comforted myself. It's fine. Getting beheaded is way scarier than this. And then the next second, I heard fabric tearing. No way. I'm done for. I fell in despair, free falling. I squeezed my eyes shut, ready to accept my fate. But after a long moment, there was no pain from hitting the ground. Could it be that I'd fallen so badly I was paralyzed? I cautiously opened my eyes, only to find myself in Claude's arms. "What did you get here?" I asked, still shaken. "From the moment you started struggling while hanging from the curtain," Claude answered. "Good grief. Then you just watched all that happen?" I muttered inwardly. "Couldn't you have said something?" "Embarrassed," I said. "I was worried you'd fall." Before I could finish, Claude said. I squirmed awkwardly in Claude's arms, wanting to get down. "I'm fine now. You can put me down." Claude tightened his grip on my arm and said seriously, "Not until I'm sure you're not hurt." "So what exactly were you trying to do?" I felt a little stifled, so I wanted to take a walk. I blurted out, making up an excuse on the spot, my palms sweating nervously. Claude clearly didn't believe me, and I wasn't good at lying anyway, so I just said it directly. "I don't want to stay here anymore." To my surprise, Claude's eyes instantly reddened. In a pitiful voice, he asked, "Aila, do you hate me that much?" How on earth was Claude able to make that kind of expression so naturally? I was deeply shocked. That face with that expression was just unfair. "I don't hate you. I just want to divorce you," I said, forcing down my racing heartbeat. "I know," Claude said softly. "You were willing to risk breaking your legs and do something this dangerous just to leave me." Then he carried me back to my room. After setting me down, Claude told me to rest well and turned to leave. I hesitated, thanked him, then stopped him. "I'm not finished talking. Thank you for helping my family pay off its debts. But the marriage we entered as a price for that has never had any loyalty in it. I know you hate me. We never spent our wedding night together. Before I came to ask for a divorce, we'd barely even seen each other. I really want to end this empty marriage. This is insane." "Aila, this is a misunderstanding," Claude said, covering his face. But I still stated what I wanted. "Divorce-me, Claude. Aila, give me a chance. Give me a chance to make it right," Claude said. "A marriage without love? Then if we fall in love, would we no longer divorce?" Claude asked me. "Love? Wasn't that actually a perfect excuse not to divorce? I'll give you a chance. Of course, if I fall in love with you, that's a different matter. But this chance comes with conditions." I looked into Claude's eyes and said, 1 month. 1 month for you to make me fall in love with you," I declared. The initiative was in my hands now. Then this chance, the one most likely to get me my divorce, I absolutely couldn't let slip by. And I absolutely couldn't let it succeed. If I fall in love with you, I won't bring up divorce again. But if, after 1 month, I still haven't changed my mind, you have to agree to divorce. In truth, even if the time were longer than that, I was confident I wouldn't fall for Claude. Between my life and Claude, my life obviously mattered more. Claude agreed happily. 1 month, remember, I emphasized. After Claude left, I lay in bed doing the math. There were still 5 months until the rebellion. Spending 1 month on this was still manageable. Besides, there was no way I'd fall for Claude anyway. So I might as well live this pampered life a bit longer before I left. Early the next morning, the mansion was bustling outside. There were many carriages parked outside. Did a merchant caravan arrive? Just then, Lania came in. "What's going on outside?" I asked. "You didn't know? They say it's a gift from the Duke to you," Lania said happily. "You should go see. Today I'll dress you even more beautifully than usual." "The Duke sent you many jewels and ornaments," Lania said. "He even sent the princess's diamond," Lania told me in amazement. "What is the princess's diamond?" I asked in confusion. "It's a diamond once worn by the princess of a fallen kingdom 100 years ago, the most expensive diamond in the entire empire," Lania explained excitedly. Such a grand gesture. Was Claude planning to move me with sheer quantity? Did he really think I cared about things like that? Such a simple-minded Duke. Love can't be bought with material things. I thought smugly. Lania showed me the princess's diamond. I could definitely see why it was the most expensive diamond in the empire. But unfortunately, I wasn't someone who could be won over by material things. "Go get Claude," I instructed Lania. "Are you going to thank the Duke, madam?" Lania asked with relief. "No, I'm going to make him take them back," I answered. Lania instantly looked like all the color had drained from her face. I turned and headed straight for the door. Lania followed me to the study on the verge of tears. I pushed the door open firmly and said, "Claude, we need to talk. Don't you like the gifts I sent?" Claude asked. I slapped the desk and said, "This is cheating." "How is it cheating? You don't like the princess's diamond? Then I'll give you something else," Claude said. "I'm talking about sincerity. I didn't ask you for jewels or money. Are you trying to buy me over with material things?" I demanded. "But this is my sincerity. I wanted to use this to prove my feelings. Won't you even accept that?" Claude said in disappointment. "You can't prove sincerity with things like this," I said righteously. In reality, I was struggling to restrain myself, because sparkling jewels really were hard to refuse. Then Claude gave a cold snort. "Then throw them away." He turned at once, about to toss the jewel box out the window. "No, Claude, stop." I hurriedly stopped him. I grabbed his hand in a panic. "Don't throw them away. That would be such a waste. I'll accept them." Claude handed me the box and said, "Fine. They're yours anyway. I never meant to buy your feelings with jewels. I just thought they suited you." Claude looked at me as he said it. With a face like his, even looking at a dog would seem affectionate. I hurriedly said goodbye and tried to leave. "Then what kind of gift do you like?" Claude asked. "A gift filled with sincerity," I answered. Then I pushed the door open and left, without hearing Claude murmur to himself, "I thought you'd like it." Apparently not. Claude took off his clothes, preparing to rest, revealing a body covered in scars. Bitter memories also came rushing back. Master of a land overflowing with gold, a powerful duke second only to the imperial family in authority, none of those things had any value. When he was 15, his mother drank poison and died, and all the gold in the world was useless. Before he came into power at 16, his father was assassinated, and authority could not save him. He hadn't been able to protect anything he wanted to protect. So what meaning was there in possessing all of this? Everyone who grew close to me died. Since I can protect nothing, I chose to have nothing at all. Claude clenched his teeth, sinking into painful memories. Aila, burdened with debt. A poor family. Someone harmless. As long as I wasn't greedy, I thought Aila wouldn't leave. I thought Aila was afraid of me, so I only dared to watch over her from afar. I never imagined it would lead to this result. I still remember how, after the wedding, Aila was sometimes terribly afraid of me. She didn't even dare hold my hand. So I no longer dared go see Aila either. I was afraid my concern would only bring her pain. But then Aila suddenly changed. And the first thing she said after changing was divorce. I don't want to lose her too. She wants to leave, but that's all right. I know what I did wrong now. There's still 1 month left. If I do my best to make things right, Aila will stay. Claude sat at the bedside, head lowered, thinking. Just then, the butler knocked on the door and said, "Your Grace, I saw you hadn't eaten and were still reading official documents, so I brought you some tea." Henry, throughout all of history, haven't humans always liked expensive jewels? What exactly is a gift full of sincerity? Claude asked the butler. What people want, of course, is the other person's sincerity. What Madame wants is your heart, your Grace. You still haven't spent any time on Madame. Henry answered. Rather than approaching her rashly, you might try starting with an earnest conversation. Add a little gentle physical contact, Henry suggested. Wouldn't physical contact be too rude? Claude asked worriedly. You must have the other person's consent and not make them uncomfortable. Something at the level of holding hands. Henry explained. Claude abruptly stood up and said, "Thank you, Henry. Could you go tell Aila first? I want to go see her and spend time with just the two of us." Henry hurriedly said, "Your Grace, it's too late right now. Tomorrow would be better." Henry hadn't even finished speaking before Claude cut him off by slamming the door behind him. And Claude's sudden whim sent the entire mansion into a flurry of activity late into the night. Lania hurriedly urged me to get ready. And I was still in the middle of checking the dresses that hadn't arrived yet, right when I was already stressed enough to go bald. "What is it now, in the middle of the night?" I asked. Lania blushed and shouted the explosive news. "The Duke is coming here. Tonight must be the long-delayed first night. Our first night, so when material gifts didn't work, things started heading in a bad direction." Huh? I bit down hard in anger. I thought he was just a war-crazed maniac. But turns out he's a perverted bastard too. I fumed inwardly. A sudden image flashed through my mind. Claude, his face flushed red, pushing open my door and saying, "Aila, you told me to show you my sincerity. If I want to prove my feelings, this is the only way. So here I am." As he spoke, Claude pulled open his shirt. Then he took off his top in front of me. Tonight, my heart is yours, Ayla, Claude said. I immediately shook my head hard and shattered the fantasy image. I clenched my fists and told myself not to be swayed by lust. If you dare lay a finger on me, I absolutely won't let you off, Claude, I thought bitterly. Just then, Lania said, Madam, the Duke has arrived. I pinched myself to stay calm and gave the order coolly. Let him in. Ayla, so we could spend time alone together. I put off my busy work, Claude said. I shot to my feet and accused him. You push aside all your important duties? You really are that desperate? I glared at Claude furiously. It's true I haven't had a proper meal in a long time. I've been very busy, Claude said. But tonight, I'm giving all of it to you. As he said that, Claude placed a hand on my shoulder. My anger instantly exploded. Do you think I'll just let myself be taken advantage of? I shouted furiously. Then I punched Claude as hard as I could. In that moment, I thought I'd hit a stone wall rather than a person. No matter how sturdy someone is, can a human body really be that hard? I clutched my hand, my face twisted in pain. Claude asked anxiously, Are you all right? Why are you so angry? I pushed off all my work to come see you. Half angry and half embarrassed, I blurted out, who would be happy about spending their first night together without the other person's consent? Claude looked confused, then instantly turned bright red. Stammering, he said, You misunderstood. I wasn't thinking anything like that. I came to show you my sincerity, Claude explained. Then what were you trying to show me this late at night? I asked awkwardly. My complete time. If you want it, I can set everything else aside, Claude said. That's it? I asked. Claude nodded. I instantly felt unbearably awkward. Well, it looked like this attempt had failed too. Sorry for startling you. It's late, so I'll go now, Claude explained hurriedly. Wait. I stopped him before my brain could catch up with my mouth. He looked so pitiful that I couldn't help it. Since I'd already stopped him, I had no choice but to come up with an excuse. Let's go for a walk together. His legs are way too long. I followed behind Claude, panting. Where do you want to go? Claude asked. Just anywhere, I said. The moment Claude heard that, he immediately suggested, Then how about the front garden? It's easier to walk there. The front courtyard was like a sea of flowers, dreamlike beneath the night sky. It's so beautiful. I can't believe the Duke's residence has a place like this. Thank you for bringing me here, I said to Claude. It's really beautiful, I sighed. Claude froze for a second. Claude, are you all right? I asked worriedly. Your expression looks strange. Are you really okay? What's wrong with my expression? Claude denied it at once and asked back. I touched his face, searched for the right words, and said, You look radiant. Only after saying it did I realize how suggestive it sounded. But it really was true. Even if only for a moment, I thought to myself. I immediately changed the subject. This place is really well maintained. I looked at the carefully tended flowers. I had thought he wouldn't care about flowers and plants. My mother liked this place, Claude explained. I instantly remembered the plot from the novel. Claude's parents had died less than a year apart. His mother had been poisoned. His father, driven mad, trying to find the mastermind, had been assassinated. At such a desperate time, Claude became the young Duke, yet still couldn't find a single clue to the murderer of his parents. Claude must have suffered terribly. I'm sorry, Claude, I said apologetically. It's all right. It was all a long time ago. Instead, Claude turned and comforted me. Do you come to the garden often? I asked. I don't like flowers, but I come here when I miss my mother. And while I'm here, I tend them, Claude said. Looking at his lonely expression, I picked a blooming flower and handed it to him. You said you don't really like flowers, but please accept this anyway. After all, looking at beautiful flowers can lift your mood a little. Out of my sight, Claude's ears instantly turned red. Looking at me, he said, They really are beautiful. Do you like flowers? Claude asked. Who doesn't like pretty things? I answered. Whether it's jewels or flowers, beautiful things are always appealing. That's exactly why I keep getting dazzled by Claude's face. I thought helplessly, damn it, he's so handsome. How can anyone not be affected by that face? I ground my teeth inwardly. You like flowers? Claude suddenly said, interrupting my thoughts and making me jump. He picked a flower and placed it in my hand. It suits you, Claude said, looking at me. Just as I was shyly at a loss, Claude reached a hand through the strands of hair by my face and said, Let me try this. He tucked the flower into my hair. It truly matches you, Claude said softly. That move caught me completely off guard. What was even more embarrassing was that, for a second, I thought we were about to kiss. "We should head back now," I said in a rush, then turned and fled. "Claude really is dangerous," I muttered inwardly. After returning to my room and lying down on the bed, the strongest feeling I had was hunger. I rang the bell to summon Lania. After hearing my instructions, Lania just kept staring at me. "What is it? Is there something on my face?" No. "Madam." Lania jumped in surprise. "Madam looked especially charming today," Lania said, blushing. Was this sudden flattery? I was confused. No, wait. To be more accurate, Aila's body had always been beautiful. I had to admit, transmigrating into such a beautiful body really was refreshing. Just as I reached up to touch my hair, the flower suddenly fell down. Only then did I realize Lania had been reacting to that flower. How embarrassing. I'd completely forgotten about it. No wonder people had been sneaking glances at me all the way back. Ugh, this was absolutely Black History level embarrassing. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to die of embarrassment. Lania nervously wanted to call someone in for me, but I quickly stopped her and told her to leave first. This was too humiliating. How could I have forgotten? Though it was a little romantic, but why'd I keep thinking about that kiss I imagined? Stop. I shook my head hard, trying to throw all those wild thoughts out. Anyway, after 1 month, we won't see each other again. Gripping the flower stem tightly, I swore to myself. Early the next morning, after spending the whole night thinking about Claude, I somehow found myself unconsciously walking to his office. Claude keeps acting differently from the novel. I have to confirm what's going on. If the plot keeps shifting, my life will be in danger too. But how was I supposed to confirm it? Just as I was racking my brain, the butler suddenly appeared and startled me. Don't interrupt my train of thought. "Madam, is there something you need?" the butler asked. I answered, "I was just wandering around because I was bored." The butler smiled faintly and said, "I've been working here since the late Duke was still alive. Please call me Henry." I quickly agreed. To ease the awkwardness, I asked, "Is the Duke working?" Henry smiled and said he wasn't too busy. But when I pushed the door open, what I saw was a Duke who looked extremely busy. I immediately came up with an absurd excuse. I must have gone to the wrong room. The moment I said it, I regretted it. That excuse was terrible. But Claude directly blocked my way with one hand on the wall. "I'm not busy at all." "Come in," Claude said. "You came here yourself, so where are you trying to go now?" Claude looked down at me as he spoke. Embarrassed, I looked away and said, "Didn't I just say so?" "I just came to the wrong room." "Then stay for a while before going back," Claude suggested. "You're working. I don't want to disturb you." I found what I thought was the perfect excuse. "Not at all," Claude said seriously, looking at me. "Then have some tea." "Move aside." I gave in. "What kind of tea do you like?" Claude led me into the office. "Anything is fine," I answered. Claude picked up the teapot and actually brewed tea for me himself. Making tea for me, picking flowers with me in the front courtyard, joking around, Claude was surprisingly quite gentle. Seeing me keep staring, Claude asked, "What is it? Am I brewing it wrong?" "I'm just happy to be drinking tea made by you, Claude," I answered. Claude's tea-making skills were unexpectedly good. It tasted wonderful. "You've changed a lot." Claude looked at me and said that. "Didn't I use to avoid eye contact with you before?" I asked, nervously looking away. "Did you? So that personality before was real? And what about you now? Then or now?" Claude asked. Aila's personality was completely different from mine. I'd known this day would come sooner or later. "You don't like me after my personality changed?" I struck first. "I like this version of you more. But if you had needs, it would have been better if you'd become like this sooner," Claude answered. A person can change a lot in a year, and especially in an environment where everyone ignores me, a drastic change in personality should be normal, right? For a whole year, I never enjoyed the treatment due to the mistress of this house, I said coldly. "So that's why you dismissed the maid? Then it seems all those people should be replaced," Claude said angrily. After tea, Claude muttered to himself in the room. "How dare they ignore my wife? The discipline of the Duke's household. Since when has it become this lax?" "Your Grace," Henry interrupted Claude's muttering. Before Henry could even finish, Claude ordered, "Replace all the servants in the Duke's residence." "Really?" Henry asked in shock. "Keep only the core staff. Replace the rest," Claude ordered firmly. "Investigate those who were disrespectful to the mistress of the house. Punish the worst offenders and properly retrain the rest," Claude ordered. There is no need in this house for fools who ignore their master. Claude concluded sternly. Another morning of being woken up by noise. Why is it so loud again today? I was curious for about 3 seconds, then chose to keep nestling in bed anyway. But Lania brought bad news. Madam, the first prince's birthday ball is about to begin. You still need to look over your dress and jewelry. You need to get ready quickly, Lania urged softly. But my laziness overcame everything. I'll just look over them and choose myself, I said perfunctorily. But it's His Highness the first prince's birthday ball. Madam, aren't you looking forward to it? Lania asked in surprise. The first prince, the male lead of the original story, the one responsible for destroying the Duke's household and causing Aila's death. How could I possibly look forward to a party held by someone like that? Just thinking of my future ending scared me. I'll just throw on any dress and be done with it, I grumbled. The first prince would meet the heroine at the ball, and the other nobles would look down on Aila, a duchess unloved by her husband, born from an insignificant family. This ball was basically a dragon's den, though I hated being looked down on like this. In a way, it actually benefited me now. I'm at Aila. This is the perfect chance for me to repay them in kind. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I'm going to trample them all underfoot so they never dare act arrogant again. After spending the entire day choosing clothes, I didn't return to my room until evening. The moment I pushed open the door, a fragrant scent rushed over me. My God, my room has turned into a sea of flowers. What is going on? Not a single flower had wilted. I touched one of the petals and was shocked to find it dusted with a layer of gold powder. In the original novel, gold powder represented magic. So this means every single flower had been enchanted? Magic had been cast on every flower so they wouldn't wilt? How expensive must that be? What on earth was he thinking? Just as I was muttering to myself, Claude appeared carrying flowers. I had to admit, flowers really suited Claude. He handed me the bouquet and asked, Aila, do you like it? Because you said you wanted a gift full of sincerity, and you said you liked flowers. I thought this gift couldn't possibly be the wrong one. Claude said this with a red face. Seeing my troubled expression, he asked, don't you like it? It's very beautiful. But actually, one flower would have been enough, I answered. How could I give only one flower to my wife? Claude said as he looked at me. I was already grateful enough that you let me go into the front garden. This gift is too precious. I looked at the flowers whose beauty was being preserved with gold powder magic as I spoke. Then Claude reached his hand toward my ear and said, this is nothing. There's a petal on you. I watched him remove the petal and blushed all over. Claude bid me good night and went out, while I was still embarrassed by the fantasy I just had. The way Claude said those words made me feel like what he meant was, Aila, compared to you, these flowers are nothing. This is so embarrassing. Why have I started winning myself over all on my own? I reflected deeply on this. Time flew, and before long, it was the first prince's birthday. Lania started dressing me up bright and early. Madam, you're more beautiful and dazzling than ever, Lania exclaimed, starry-eyed. I also thanked the maids who had been rushing around these days. Even though they had ignored me a lot before, this time it was thanks to their help. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to deal with all these complicated things by myself. But what I hadn't expected was that they were suddenly trying to ingratiate themselves with me too, completely different from their former coldness. I immediately became curious and dismissed them all, leaving only Lania behind. Lania, what's going on with them? Why has their attitude toward me changed so much? Lania jumped, thinking I was about to scold her. Because the Duke punished the people who ignored you in the past. Now only the loyal servants remain in the Duke's residence. Lania hurriedly explained. I heard they'll be selecting new attendants soon. Madam said good things about me, so I wasn't driven out. Lania said with a smile. Once I understood what had happened, I also understood the reason for the previous chaos in the Duke's residence. The banquet was about to begin as well, so I called for Lania and set off. When I came out, I found Claude actually waiting for me at the entrance. I thought he would have left first. Claude held out his arm for me to take and said with a smile, your escort. I shyly took his arm. I never expected to have Claude escorting and protecting me. Then Claude ordered the carriage to depart. Seeing me keep staring at him, Claude asked why I was looking at him like that. That outfit suits you. I praised him. Claude smiled and said, you as well. A loud thumping rang in my ears. Hey, heart, behave yourself. I scolded my disobedient heartbeat inwardly. I heard you drove out the servants from the Duke's residence. Was it because of me? I asked. Not entirely, but there was no reason to keep fools who ignored their mistress, Claude answered. While the carriage was moving, I also planned to get a better sense of what I was about to face. Claude, what kind of person is the first prince? I asked. Claude frowned at once and said unhappily, "Why are you suddenly asking about him?" I explained that I was just curious. Claude answered bluntly, making his feelings very clear. "My wife is asking me about another man right in front of me. I'm not very happy." I hurriedly explained that I really was just curious. Claude continued, "And I'm sincerely jealous too." Still, Claude did give me an introduction, but only one sentence. "The first prince is not a satisfactory person," Claude said disdainfully. I was stunned. Claude was actually this dissatisfied with the original novel's male lead? Was it because he was about to rebel? "Haven't you met the first prince before?" Claude asked. I searched Aila's memories and said, "I've only seen him from afar a few times, and only briefly." A strange smile appeared on Claude's face. "Once you meet him, you'll understand what kind of person the first prince is. The male lead of the novel, he shouldn't be that strange, right?" Claude got out of the carriage before me and held out his hand, signaling for me to use it for support. "I'm just wearing heels and don't want to fall," I told myself. I placed my hand in Claude's. Then the carriage jolted the next second, and I really did lose my balance. So not only did I end up clutching Claude's hand, I ended up in Claude's arms too. We were way too close. I was so embarrassed I wanted to disappear. "Thank you for catching me," I said to Claude. Seeing that Claude still looked tense with worry for me, I quickly changed the subject. "We're late. Let's hurry inside." The moment we entered the hall, I immediately felt many hostile, assessing gazes turn our way. I simply turned my head and stopped looking around. Why should I care about people who dislike me? Just then, the Emperor arrived in dazzling fashion with the original story's male lead, the first prince. And then, the first prince wore an expression of complete boredom. Wasn't he supposed to be the formidable man who personally dealt with the Duke in the novel? How could he wear every emotion so openly on his face? "Thank you all for attending the first prince's birthday. May all the people of the Empire enjoy health and peace," the Emperor said in a toast. Then he glanced at the utterly bored first prince beside him, coughed twice as a hint, and said, "Prince, say a few words as well." The first prince hesitated for a moment, then suddenly pulled out a bottle of wine and said, "No one listens to boring speeches. I hate complicated things." Then he started gulping the wine straight down, leaving my jaw hanging open. After drinking, the first prince wiped his mouth and said, "Since you all went to the trouble of coming here, just eat and drink your fill." I was completely shattered. How could the male lead be like this? Where was the romantic, dreamy novel male lead energy? He was chugging wine at his own birthday ball. Could the heroine really fall in love with a male lead like this? What happened to his character setting? Is this the original story or some bizarre fan rewrite? Claude said confidently, "Looks like you believe me now." I was speechless. The Emperor, helpless, announced the start of the ball. As soon as the graceful music began, the hidden eyes around the room turned back to me and Claude, watching as if they wanted to read my mind. I really hate occasions like this. That's why I never wanted to come to social gatherings. Claude was thinking irritably when I spoke and interrupted his thoughts. "Claude, aren't you going over there? It looks like everyone wants to talk to you." I noticed those gazes directed his way too. "No, absolutely not necessary." Claude refused cleanly. "I'd rather stay by your side," Claude said, looking at me. That caught me completely off guard. Talking so awkwardly and directly all of a sudden. Was he still carrying out his plan to make me change my mind even at the ball? He really was being sincere. As I was thinking of a way to dodge this sudden attack from those intense eyes, the Emperor just happened to come over to greet Claude. I let out a relieved breath. Claude really could pass for a national idol. So many people wanted to talk to him. He could hold a fan meet and greet. While the two of them exchanged polite words, I let my thoughts run wild beside them. The Emperor then turned and offered me a few courteous words. I hurriedly returned the proper greeting, but soon enough he went back to talking with Claude with no real interest in me. The Emperor invited Claude to speak privately. Claude immediately glanced at me. I wanted to physically turn his face back. Refusing the Emperor would be rude. I signaled frantically with my eyes, but Claude answered the Emperor with, "Say it here." Inside, I screamed, "Has this man lost his mind?" I quickly nudged Claude and said, "It's an honor to speak with His Majesty. Go ahead, don't worry about me. I'm not a child, so what are you worrying about? Hurry up and go with the Emperor," I urged inwardly. After the two of them finally left together, I at last let out the breath I'd been holding. I almost got targeted, then I would die even worse than in the original story. Claude followed the Emperor away. I finally relaxed. Lady Aila, no, I should say Duchess now, right? A girl teased maliciously. Oh great, trouble. I'm feeling generous, so I won't stoop to your level. I responded with cold indifference. If you have nothing to say, I'll be going first. The moment I said that, she flew into a rage. I didn't say anything that bad, did I? Was she angry just because Aila, who had never dared talk back before, was suddenly standing up to her? I was a little puzzled. So now that you're a duchess, you've gotten arrogant. Huh? Are you pretending you don't recognize me, Marilyn? The duchess who never even had her first night and got laughed at by everyone. She snapped aggressively. Oh, so it's Miss Marilyn. No wonder it took me a moment to remember. Someone so boring and insignificant isn't easy to recall. I shot back, and Marilyn instantly broke down. Her knight in shining armor, Albert, rushed over and demanded, "Marilyn only wanted to comfort you because you couldn't even spend your wedding night. How could you make her cry? Were these people insane?" They were talking about something like that out in public. Other than the imperial family and the Duke, I was the highest-ranking person here. So they really dared to pick a fight. Fine, then they could take what was coming. Who gave you the nerve to shout at a duchess? Apologize right now. Otherwise, wait for the ducal house to hold you accountable. Albert immediately lowered his head and apologized, but still tried to make excuses, saying he only shouted by accident. I poured wine straight over his head and said coldly, "Then this was my accident." Albert froze on the spot. Then, with red wine dripping from his hair, he demanded angrily, "What are you doing? People with thick skin really are shameless." "It was only an accident," I said disdainfully. "Just like how you accidentally shouted at the Duchess just now." I let out a cold laugh. Albert could only grind his teeth in impotent fury. Then sudden laughter rang out from the crowd. "Who keeps laughing over there?" I frowned. Then the person laughing stepped forward, saying with amusement, "How interesting." It was the first prince. Impressive, impressive. The first prince applauded as he laughed. I could only think, has this original male lead gone crazy? You really have a talent for pushing people into a corner. No, more accurately, are you at the level of slapping people right across the face? The first prince laughed as he said it. "If the disturbance caused by me has ruined your highness's enjoyment, I apologize," I said to him. "Not at all. It was unbearably boring to begin with. Thanks to you, I got to see something entertaining," the first prince said with a smile. "Besides, that one is trash." As he spoke, he opened a bottle of red wine. Then he poured the whole bottle over Albert's head as well. Albert stared at the first prince in disbelief. What? He acted so rudely toward the Duchess. "It's only right for me to treat him this way too, isn't it?" the first prince said with a smile. Meanwhile, I was frantically searching my memory of the original novel, unable to understand why the first prince was speaking up for me. In the original, he didn't care about Aila at all. He probably didn't even notice her until she was executed. Because in the original story, the first prince should only have cared about the heroine, Edith. So why was he helping me out? The first prince waved for Albert to get lost, then asked, "Aila, was it?" I hadn't expected the first prince to actually know Aila's name. That is a surprise. I was wondering what kind of woman that hunk of iron ended up marrying. "You're rather interesting." The first prince said it teasingly. Then he suddenly stepped aside. I turned and saw that Claude and the Emperor had returned. Claude was scanning the room, clearly looking for me. I'd just been about to greet him. But the first prince suddenly leaned close, pressed a hand to my shoulder, and said, "Aila, until next time." Then he walked away with a strange smile, leaving me unable to figure out what he was thinking. A little earlier, Claude had been walking beside the Emperor, but the whole time he had been worrying about Aila. At the ducal estate, servants had already looked down on her. What if people here did the same? I really should have stayed by her side. Claude was beginning to regret leaving with the Emperor. I want to go back to Aila right now and see whether anyone is giving her trouble. Just as Claude was thinking that, the Emperor interrupted him. "Thanks to you, the Empire's standing has risen. Your valor is unmatched," the Emperor praised. "The Empire's rise and standing is due to your majesty, not me," Claude replied. "No need to be so modest. The Empire needs talented men like you, Duke. said the emperor. After all, there are people who oppose me at every turn. The moment Claude heard that, he immediately realized the emperor intended to move against the nobility. At present, the empire was divided into the emperor's faction and the noble faction, and the emperor had no wish to share power with the nobles. His concerns about nobles who were not loyal to him were understandable. Claude understood exactly what the emperor meant. The emperor wanted to win over Claude, who belonged to neither side. "For the safety of the empire, stand at my side, Claude," said the emperor. "Thank you for your majesty's regard. This body of mine wishes only to devote itself wholly to the empire," Claude replied, politely refusing. Although Claude's answer was not what the emperor wanted, it at least made clear that Claude would not join the noble faction. So the emperor smiled and changed the subject. Just then, an attendant suddenly came to report something. Claude only caught words like "the first prince poured a whole bottle of wine," and immediately grew worried about Aila, still in the banquet hall. So he quickly followed the emperor back toward the hall. Claude had only just found Aila in the sea of people when he saw the first prince standing extremely close to her. And Aila looked furious. "Prince or not, if you dare lay a hand on my wife, then don't blame me for what happens next." Claude strode toward the first prince, radiating hostility. As for me, I was also baffled by how suddenly the first prince had leaned in. Then I saw Claude walking toward me under a cloud of pressure, so heavy I could practically see black smoke rising off him. But besides Claude's killing intent, I sharply sensed another murderous gaze that made my back go cold. Wow, how amazing, I thought. Except, why is someone staring at me like they want to kill me? Wait, how did I forget the heroine when she's this eye-catching? Edith, who likes the first prince, had actually set her sights on me. What was I supposed to do now? I felt like the sky was collapsing. Claude took my hand, interrupting my thoughts. Compared to the strange first prince and the heroine glaring at me, Claude looked friendlier after all. Or so I thought. Why was this man staring at me so darkly? I heard there was some disturbance in the banquet hall just now. Are you all right? Claude asked me. I'm fine, I said guiltily. Honestly, Albert and Marilyn were the ones in worse shape. That guy, the first prince, didn't do anything to you, did he? Claude asked seriously. I immediately covered his mouth. How could he call the first prince that guy? Nothing happened with the prince, I quickly explained. Who knew Claude would actually blush? What exactly was he blushing over? Then why were you together? Claude asked with a smile, the dark aura finally fading. He's this bothered by me being with the first prince. Don't tell me he's jealous? I thought, while sneaking a glance at the fuming Edith. The expressions on those two, just now, were practically identical. But Claude had no reason to be jealous of me. So what was going on? The first prince just helped me out of a difficult situation, I explained. Claude immediately caught the important part. What difficult situation? It wasn't anything serious, I said. But Claude apologized instead. I should have stayed by your side. Then he moved to take me away. The birthday ball is over. Let's go, Claude said. The moment we got home, I threw myself onto the bed. I was exhausted, not because of the ball, but because of the first prince, who had shown concern for me for no reason, and Edith, who was clearly targeting me now, and also Claude, who was impossible to understand. Forget it. Better just sleep. What did the male and female leads, and Claude, have to do with me anyway? I should hurry up and get divorced. If I just endure it a little longer and stay quiet enough, the male and female leads won't show up. Early the next morning, Henry brought me 3 letters. 2 were useless. 1 was important. For proper, well-mannered Henry to call letters useless. What kind of letters were they? I was very curious. They were actually from Albert and Marilyn. Why were they writing to me? To curse me? But the contents of the 2 letters were nearly identical. Both begged for my forgiveness. Henry, standing off to the side, said I could ignore them. So I asked Henry why they were writing in the first place. Henry explained that the Duke had investigated and punished the nobles who had treated me unfairly and had also cut off trade with them. They were writing in hopes that I would show them mercy. Isn't that a little too much? I asked. I was worried someone might become desperate enough to drag Claude down with them. Henry said cheerfully, they'll all be finished soon enough. No need to worry. Soon to be finished. And he said it so cheerfully. This old man was a little terrifying. I thought darkly that they had brought it on themselves. Judging by how arrogant they had been, they must have bullied plenty of people before. Since the 2 letters weren't worth answering, I told Henry to burn them and handed him the remaining one. Who could it be from? I pulled out the one Henry had called important. No wonder he said it was important. The paper wrapping was different too. I opened it, only to find it was from someone I had never met. Princess Dora had sent an invitation asking me to attend a tea party. Henry reminded me that I would need to send a reply. Can I just not go? I asked. It would be easy to run into the first prince in the palace, and I didn't want to take that risk. Henry said awkwardly, "Unfortunately, unless there is a special reason, it would not be appropriate to refuse Her Highness the Princess's invitation." I knew my hope had been naive. She was the princess, someone who, like a prince, could also be named crown heir. At a time when the crown heir had not yet been decided, Princess Dora was also one of the contenders for the throne. The first prince originally had a younger brother, the second prince, but he had died. The empress also died under unclear circumstances afterward. The original story never mentioned the cause of their deaths. There was no advantage in being noticed by those in power. If I wanted to survive in one piece, I had to go. Will Edith be there too? I asked. Henry gave an affirmative reply, saying, "As the first prince's beloved, she is attracting a great deal of attention. If Edith was going to the tea party too, then maybe this would actually be good for me. I could use the chance to clear up the misunderstanding. Then I'd do my best and improve my relationship with Edith through the princess's tea party. Please send my reply and say that I will attend as well," I instructed Henry. "Aila, what brings you to see me today?" Claude asked from his chair. I apologized awkwardly. "I'm sorry about what happened at the ball." Claude looked confused. "What do you have to apologize for?" I hesitated. Even if they started it, I still shouldn't have caused a scene. I failed to uphold noble decorum. Damn it, I should have cursed them out softly. I should have insulted them in a refined, noble whisper. I sighed in regret. "You did well," Claude said straightforwardly. I stared at him blankly. I said you did well. "Next time, do the same," Claude emphasized. He even added, "If anyone dares pick a fight again, you can splash wine on them like the first prince did. I'll handle the aftermath." "Is that all you came to say? Then I won't accept your apology, because you did nothing wrong." I quickly interrupted. "It's not just that. Her Highness the Princess invited me to a tea party. I'll need to go to the palace soon," I hurriedly explained, finally getting to the real reason I had come. Claude answered without hesitation, "Let's go together." "What? Go with me to Her Highness the Princess's tea party? Weren't only noble ladies and married women invited? How would he even go? And besides, the image of Claude, with those hands that held power over life and death, gently lifting a teacup and smiling in a sunlit garden, felt way too bizarre. And putting a black wolf into a flock of sheep. Wouldn't the tea party instantly turn into a horror scene? I immediately cut him off. I could go by myself. It's a gathering of women. Claude peut-être une appétit. Understood. But if anyone dares to be rude to you again like last time, if they splash tea on you. Claude's eyes darkened. Helplessly, I said, "The tea at a tea party would probably be scalding hot." Claude crossed his arms and said as if it were obvious, "All the better if it's hot. Just remember their names and tell me. I'll make sure their entire family never dares act up again." For the sake of world peace, it seemed I would have to ignore whoever caused trouble. Otherwise, burying someone would only take a moment. On the day of the tea party, Lania dressed me up brilliantly. I felt a little embarrassed, but Lania insisted, "You suit gorgeous colors best, and it's been so long since you attended a tea party. No matter where you go, making the first impression count is important." After Lania's enthusiastic brainwashing, I felt confident too. Everything would definitely go smoothly. "Madam," Lania said as she saw me off, and I did my best to carry myself with noble grace. When I arrived at the palace again, I had a little more time to admire it this time. Under the sunlight, I could make out even more details of the palace buildings. I couldn't help sighing in admiration. The sky is so blue. The grass is so green. The palace is so huge. Quite a few ladies had already arrived, so I tried to go over and blend in. But wherever I walked, the girls there scattered like birds. Seriously? Had these people who were always bullying others started avoiding me in fear just because I poured a little wine once? Too lazy to bother with them, I followed the maid's guidance to my seat and sat down. The moment I sat, I felt a fiery, impossible-to-ignore stare. I looked up. The heroine, Edith, was still glaring at me unhappily. And by pure coincidence, our seats happened to be facing each other. Princess Dora greeted me, and I quickly responded, interested, no longer looking at puffed-up pufferfish Edith. Seeing the princess speak to me, some people immediately couldn't hold back anymore. "Your Highness, have you heard about what the Duchess did at the ball? She was terrifying that day." The princess's interest was instantly piqued. "What interesting thing happened at my brother's birthday ball?" "I wasn't there that day because I was feeling unwell." "What a shame." Another person, seeing that the princess was interested, immediately chimed in. "Someone was rude to the Duchess at the ball, and the Duchess taught him a harsh lesson. She poured wine over his head. It really gave me such a fright. How could a noble do something so disgraceful? Even commoners in the streets wouldn't do that." Hearing the sarcasm, I remained completely calm. "Who was speaking just now?" I looked at them. I asked, "Miss Chappelle, do you not even possess the most basic refinement expected of a noble? To not even know another noble's name?" Miss Chappelle grew angry. I smiled faintly, which only made her even angrier. "You still have a nerve to smile? You don't even have the most basic noble manners." Hearing that, I readily admitted it. "Yes, Miss Chappelle, I do lack noble refinement. But how could I compare to you, who insulted His Highness the First Prince? That was far more improper." I smiled coldly. If one was going to pin a crime on someone, naturally one should choose the gravest charge possible. Insulting the imperial family was perfect. Miss Chappelle instantly panicked. "When did I ever insult His Highness the Prince?" "Don't slander me," I said calmly. "At the ball last time, it wasn't only me who poured wine. His Highness the First Prince did as well, didn't he?" "According to your words, that means His Highness also did something lowly that even street commoners wouldn't do. I could endure you insulting me, but I never imagined Miss Chappelle would dare insult His Highness the First Prince. Her Highness the Princess is present as well. Miss, you should mind your words. You misspoke. Please control your emotions." The princess smoothed things over. Miss Chappelle took the offered way out and said, "How could His Highness the Prince be compared with commoners? I was shallow in my thinking. I misspoke. Please forgive me, Your Highness." The princess merely ordered the servant beside her, "Send Miss Chappelle away." "Miss Chappelle, you had better watch your tongue. Return home today and reflect on yourself." Left with no choice, Chappelle rose and, under the guidance of a maid, left with heavy steps. Once she had gone far enough, Her Highness looked at me. "Something unpleasant happened just now. I hope the Duchess won't take it to heart." I immediately smiled and replied, "Of course not. It was merely the ugly display of someone incompetent. I also hope Your Highness won't be troubled by it. The Duchess is very thoughtful. Then let us all forget what happened. I prepared some excellent tea." The princess smoothly changed the subject. But it was obvious that the atmosphere at the gathering had changed. They were probably afraid of being thrown out like Miss Chappelle. In that heavy atmosphere, Edith suddenly asked me, "Lady Aila, how have things been between you and the Duke lately?" So that's why I had felt uneasy. It had to be because of what happened with the First Prince last time, that it made the heroine target me. At this point, I could only take things as they came. I sighed and asked, "What is it, Miss Edith?" The heroine smiled. "Lady, you may just call me Edith." She was actually smiling at me. Did that mean she didn't really see me as an enemy after all? If so, that would be for the best. I had come here intending to get along with the heroine. I wanted to become closer to you for some time. I was curious whether your relationship with your husband is a good one. The moment I heard that, I knew something was off. Surely no one here didn't know that our marriage was bad. Asking in public like this, I smiled pleasantly. So she was here to pick a fight after all. "Edith, are you very concerned about my marriage?" I asked with a smile. Edith blinked as if puzzled. "I was just curious. Does that require a reason?" "But being overly concerned about someone else's marriage isn't very proper," I said. Edith replied darkly, "But if a marriage is good, then one wouldn't be concerned with another woman's man, would one?" "Of course, I'm not talking about you, my lady. I just know many people like that. A noble duchess like you couldn't possibly be compared to those sorts of women, right?" Edith asked arrogantly. The women around her immediately echoed, "That's right, that's right." Only then did I realize just how difficult this heroine was. She was completely different from the heroine as described in the original novel. In the book, the heroine was timid and passive. She could barely even speak clearly to strangers, but she was kind and adorable. When the First Prince first met her, he helped that shy girl. But the heroine before me now wasn't shy at all, and her personality was nowhere near passive. I had already felt earlier that this novel had done a poor job portraying its characters. But surely it shouldn't be so bad that even the protagonist had gone completely off track. This was absurd. Maybe there would be even more settings that had never appeared in the novel. Then, if something happened that had never been mentioned in the original story, what was I supposed to do? Suddenly, the heroine cut through my thoughts. If I caused you to misunderstand, I apologize. I was only simply concerned about your marriage. I smiled and thanked her, but then changed tone. I will handle my marital affairs myself. There is no need for you to worry about them, Edith. At that moment, another lady cut in. Everyone knows the Duchess and the Duke are not close. It's understandable if she doesn't want to talk about it. Wait, what you're saying? Before I could finish, someone else took over and asked, "Who said our relationship is bad?" I looked up at the speaker. It was Claude. I hadn't expected him to come on his own after all. The ladies all stood up at once, preparing to bow. I was no less shocked than they were. Claude wrapped an arm around my shoulders and stood before the lady who had just spoken. "Say it again to my face. What exactly is wrong with the relationship between my wife and me?" The woman immediately stammered out an apology. Claude ignored her and turned to me instead. "Aila, is the tea party interesting?" Then he swept a chilling look over everyone at the table. "It can't be. With people here speaking nonsense they have no business saying. Please do not misunderstand. The relationship between my wife and me is better than anyone else's. If I hear those sorts of words again, I will be in an extremely bad mood." As the atmosphere grew heavy, the princess greeted Claude, and only then did he withdraw his killing intent and salute her. "Duke, why have you come to my tea party?" the princess asked. "To act as my wife's protector," Claude replied as if it were only natural. All the ladies present gasped. The cold-blooded Duke had actually come here to protect his wife? Hadn't everyone said their relationship was poor? The princess voiced the same thought everyone else, including me, was having. I had no idea the Duke was so devoted to his wife. After bidding the princess farewell, Claude draped an arm around me and led me outside. Once we were out of their sight, I shook off his hand and asked, "Why did you come?" "I told you. To protect you," Claude said. "Was someone making things difficult for you again?" A little helplessly, I said, "Don't be like this. That lady only said one sentence." "That lady? So there were others too." "I'll deal with it," Claude said, sounding irritated. Impatiently, I answered, "I already handled it. You don't need to worry. Besides, that lady wasn't wrong. There isn't any love between us. It's simply a fact that you and I don't have a good relationship. So don't act like that again in the future. Thank you for helping me, but I'm already used to solving things myself." "Aila, Claude had just started to speak when a male voice suddenly cut in. "We meet again. We really must be fated. Aila." The first prince looked at us with a smile. "Fated? What nonsense." "Greetings, Your Highness," I said awkwardly. "Did you miss me?" the first prince asked with a smile. The moment he said that, Claude immediately stepped in front of me. "Your Highness, she is my wife." Only then did the first prince pretend to notice Claude. "Oh, so the Duke is here too. I remember you don't like the palace. What brings you here?" "That is none of Your Highness's concern. And please do not casually call my wife by her given name," Claude said sharply. I truly never expected the Duke to say things like my wife. "But what if I refuse?" the first prince provoked. Looking at the radiant first prince and Claude with black fury practically pouring off him, I felt a massive headache coming on. "Address her as the lady of House Roan Charlotte. She is not someone Your Highness may treat casually," Claude said sternly. Watching Claude dare stand up to royalty itself, I couldn't help marveling. He really was prime rebellion material. Even a prince didn't intimidate him. The first prince sneered. "Are you looking for death?" Still, I never expected the cold-blooded Duke to cherish his wife. "Madam, I apologize for addressing you so casually. Will you permit me to call you by your name?" Before he could finish, I answered directly, "No." The first prince didn't mind at all and continued, "Then next time we meet, let me call you by your name." "That won't." Before I could finish, he turned and walked away. I immediately shouted after him, "It would be inconvenient if we met again." The first prince just waved his hand. That guy hadn't intended to listen in the first place. Claude and I got into the carriage to return home. Then Claude suddenly said, "I didn't realize you were so close with the first prince." "We're not close at all. I shot back. What is this about? Claude said seriously. I told you last time. I'm extremely. After that, Claude didn't say another word. I flopped onto the bed the moment we got back. The silence in that carriage had nearly suffocated me. That look in his eyes just now seemed sincere. Possessiveness? Good heavens. Madam, you're back. Lania popped her head in and greeted me brightly. Will you be dining in your room again tonight? Yes, if that's all right. I sat up and smiled at Lania. Of course, madam. I'll inform them you'll eat in your room tonight. Lania accepted the order and was just about to leave when someone knocked on the door. Madam, may I come in? It was Henry. He entered, bowed, and said, The Duke requests to dine together with you tonight. What kind of wind was blowing now? If I refused, would he stare at me again with those suffocating eyes? It was only one dinner, after all. After thinking for a while, I told Henry to report back first. I would come to the dining hall. As soon as Henry left, Lania, who had looked excited from the start, couldn't contain herself anymore. The Duke wants to have dinner with you, madam. That's wonderful. Truly wonderful. Madam, you absolutely must have a sweet and lovely dinner with the Duke. This was actually my first time in the dining hall. I hadn't expected it to be this magnificent. If I'd known, I would have come down to eat sooner. Everything looked delicious, too. Maybe I could come here from time to time in the future. The moment he saw me, Claude, who had already been waiting in the dining hall, immediately pulled out a chair for me. It is my honor that you accepted my invitation. I looked around, wondering why Claude was the one pulling out my chair personally. Then I realized there wasn't a single attendant nearby. I had all the attendants leave, Claude said, as if he knew what I was looking for. What? I asked, confused. There are things I want to say to you in private. Let's talk while we eat. After arranging things for me, Claude sat down. Why did you suddenly ask me to eat with you? I asked in surprise, getting straight to the point. Claude replied, From now on, we should eat together often too. What do you mean? What? I was baffled. Because before, you were afraid of me. But now I can feel that you've changed. That's what I think, Claude said seriously. He looked straight at me and asked, Aila, I'm not frightening, right? And about what happened at the tea party. I am sorry. After apologizing, Claude looked at me expectantly. My mind went into overdrive. Claude had taken time he considered more precious than gold, just to apologize to me. Why? What was he thinking? I pressed down the pounding in my heart and warned myself not to waver. What I wanted was a divorce. Don't overthink it. Don't care. Understanding Claude would do me no good. Easier said than done. I couldn't control my mouth at all. I asked, Why are you sorry? I wanted to know too badly. Claude lowered his head. You were right in what you said at the palace. That lady wasn't wrong when she said we aren't close. Even though it was my behavior that caused you to suffer this, I never thought people would still dare be so presumptuous, even under the Duke's name. I also understand that you want to leave me. But Claude clenched his fists and said word by word, I want to make things right, and I want to get closer to you. I truly mean that. It's not because of the bet with you. I just want to know you better. Ever since I found out you weren't actually afraid of me. Honestly, I've been grateful that you came to make that bet with me. I don't ask for some grand, excessive love. I just want to get a little closer to you. I looked at the Claude sitting across from me. This Claude, whose nervous fingers were trembling slightly. This Claude, confessing for the first time, putting everything he had into expressing his sincerity. Looking at his slightly flushed face, I realized with painful clarity that he wasn't just a character in a novel. He wasn't the cold, merciless Duke written by some author. He was simply Claude. And that was why I couldn't stay there any longer. I abruptly stood up and cut him off. I'm sorry, Claude. I'm going back first. Faced with a Claude like this, I couldn't respond. So running away became my only answer. I could feel it. Something very important was about to be overturned completely. A few days had passed since that meal with Claude. Whether he was busy with official duties or for some other reason, he hadn't shown himself again after that. Though to be fair, I'd also been holed up in my room the whole time. Hearing a knock at the door, I assumed breakfast had arrived and told them to come in. And speak of the devil, Claude came in, apparently doubling as the meal delivery person. Claude, I cried out in shock. Showing up first thing in the morning without any warning? At least give people some time to prepare themselves mentally. What is it? Claude looked startled by my reaction. Because you suddenly appeared. And why are you the one bringing breakfast? I asked in confusion. Claude set the breakfast on the table and said, as if it were only natural, "You eat in your room, don't you? So I brought it here. What I mean is, why are you the one bringing it? I clearly have attendance for that." I forcefully dragged him back to the point he had completely missed. "This is my first time serving anyone. Shouldn't you be pleased?" Claude said, pretending not to hear the question and continuing on his own. Since I hadn't answered Claude after that last dinner, I've been anxious for days. But Claude looked unexpectedly fine. And all the dishes he brought were things I liked, though for breakfast it was a bit extravagant. While chewing my food, I asked politely, "Aren't you eating?" Claude didn't seem to care either way. Not really. But then again, he hadn't eaten breakfast yet either, had he? I guessed as much. Claude, unexpectedly, answered honestly. "I don't usually eat breakfast." Damn it. The more he said he wouldn't eat, the more I wanted to make him eat. I immediately invited him to eat with me. Claude was still refusing, so I stabbed a piece of steak with my fork and held it in front of him. Skipping breakfast is unhealthy. Health is important. Looking at how stubborn he was, I suddenly had the urge to bully him a little. Like dealing with a child, I made him open his mouth. Claude lowered his lashes and muttered, seriously, but still obediently opened his mouth and took the bite with a quiet ah. After chewing twice, he commented, "Not bad." Only then did my slow brain catch up with what my body had already done. I finally realized what I had just done. It felt like feeding meat to a wild beast. While my mind was still occupied, my body noticed Claude had finished chewing and had already begun feeding him more on its own. Bite after bite, Claude accepted them all with a quiet ah, and he claimed he didn't eat breakfast. I put down the spoon and said helplessly, "Eat by yourself." Claude instantly looked disappointed. What a pity. "So, why exactly did you bring breakfast to my room?" I asked, setting my spoon down. "I told you. I want to get closer to you," Claude said, moving nearer. My face instantly began to burn. "Do you have time today?" Claude asked. "Yes," I replied, head lowered, not daring to look at him. "Today is the spring festival." Claude looked at me with my head bowed and let out a laugh. Then, seeming a little embarrassed himself, he scratched his head and invited me. "Would you like to go together? A festival?" The noisy crowds seemed completely mismatched with Claude. It was such a hard scene to imagine. "You don't want to go?" Claude misunderstood my silence. Afraid he would hesitate, I immediately declared, "No, I want to go." Getting the answer he wanted, Claude brightened so much he practically seemed to glow. As he stood to leave, he told me, "Once you're ready, I'll come get you." Only after hearing the door close did I realize what this felt like. This was way too much like a date. No, stop thinking nonsense. Honestly, Ayla, what is wrong with you? Why is it so hot today? I touched my burning cheeks and let my thoughts run wild. I called Lania in to help me get ready. Lania confirmed, "The Duke is going to the festival with you, madam." After I nodded, she beamed with happiness. I was the one going out. So why was Lania even happier than I was? "Why are you so happy?" I asked. "The spring festival is where lovers go," Lania said cheerfully. "What?" I felt thoroughly alarmed. "Oh my, you didn't know? The spring festival is gorgeous and full of flowers. It's the perfect place for lovers to go on a date. And they say if you give your beloved flowers at the spring festival, it brings fulfilled love. The Duke is taking you to the spring festival, madam. He must like you. He'll definitely give you flowers there, too." Lania looked like she had gone full shipper. I cut her off. "Lania, you're talking too much. We're only going to enjoy the festival together." Lania said aggrievedly, "I'm sorry, madam, but this is the Duke's first time going to the festival. He doesn't like crowded places. Up until now, he's never gone to one." And my ears perked up instantly. Was there more I didn't know? "You know the Duke has been staying in his office these past few days, right? It must have been so he could go out today. He handled all the other work in advance." Lania sounded certain. I had thought he was avoiding me after I ran away from that dinner. Claude had always been busy in the novel too. But had he really made time for me despite being that busy? "All done, madam." Lania's cheerful voice interrupted my thoughts. "Thank you, Lania." I said goodbye to her. The moment I saw Claude waiting for me, I realized in less than a second that what we were wearing really did look like matching outfits. "Have you been waiting long?" I asked, shyly looking away. Claude said softly, "Not very long." Then he held out his hand to me. "Shall we?" I coughed awkwardly and lightly placed my hand in his. The moment we stepped down from the carriage, my eyes were immediately drawn to the scene before me. Lania hadn't been wrong. It really was beautiful and perfect for strolling around, and there really were lovers everywhere. But very quickly something glittering caught my eye. There was actually a stall sparkling that brightly. My desire to shop immediately took over my brain. At that point, who cared whether the person beside me was Claude or anyone else? I grabbed Claude and dragged him toward the stall. Let's go there. I want to take a closer look. I called for Claude to follow me, then looked up, and Claude was blushing. And the way we were standing really did look a little too intimate. Startled, I quickly shoved him away. Claude said helplessly, "That hurts my feelings. If you want to hold hands, just say so." I immediately retorted, "It's not that I wanted to hold hands. I only wanted to drag you along." Claude raised his hand toward me, signaling for me to take it. "Didn't you want to grab it?" I hesitated and moved closer to his hand. Claude immediately clasped my hand tightly. Turning my head away, I stubbornly said, "I can't be bothered to argue with you." Claude good-naturedly agreed with me. Once we reached the stall, my eyes and mind were filled with nothing but dazzling jewels. Looking over the merchandise, Claude asked, "Do you like this shop? I'll buy everything for you. Take your time looking." His level of extravagance shocked me so much I nearly jumped. I immediately cut him off. "I just want to look around." "You can't be that wasteful, Claude." Claude looked at me in confusion. "Wasteful?" I sighed. "Look, no one else is buying anything either, because there's no use for it." I quickly pulled Claude away from the stall. "By the way, Claude, don't you dislike festivals? I heard you've never come before." Claude looked down at me and said seriously, "I decided that starting today, I'll like them." My face immediately began burning again. I coughed awkwardly and asked, "Like what?" "Festivals." Claude leaned close to me. "Why the sudden change of heart?" I turned to look into the distance. "Because you like them." When I heard Claude say that, he took my hand and said, "Let me show you something." The lights spread across the land at sunset were beautiful. "It's a little cold. Wear this." Claude took off his coat and draped it over me, then turned and left, telling me to wait for him. Suddenly, I heard booming sounds and flashes of light from below the hill behind me. I turned to look down. It was fireworks. So beautiful. If only Claude were watching too. What kind of expression would he have? Just as I was thinking that, someone called my name from behind. Breathing hard, it was Claude, the very one who had just left. "You're late," I teased. "I wanted to show you something, so it couldn't be helped." Claude lifted the bouquet in his hand and offered it to me. "I wanted to give it to you myself." Claude looked straight into my eyes, utterly serious. I didn't take the flowers. Instead, I asked, "Claude, do you know what it means to give someone flowers at the spring festival?" "Not really." "What?" Claude asked, puzzled. Seeing me fall silent, Claude smiled helplessly. Then beneath the fireworks, he lowered his head. "And no, Claude." I stammered nervously. Our gazes met. Our lips drew closer and closer, but in the end they missed. Claude leaned close to my ear and whispered, "You don't have to care about what I think. And my feelings too." Claude looked straight into my eyes. "Your own thoughts and feelings are what matter." That was what Claude said. "Just ignore me if you want." "So, will you accept them?" Claude raised the bouquet again. I silently bit my lip. In the end, beneath the sky full of fireworks, I accepted that bouquet, the flowers carrying both his feelings and my hesitation. "Thank you." My words were swallowed beneath the fireworks. After returning home, I looked at the flowers in the vase and couldn't help thinking, when they wither and dry, would they become like these feelings whose outcome I could not know? Humans really are complicated. I had thought I would be able to leave this place easily, but for some reason, after the festival, the atmosphere in the ducal mansion changed. It wasn't just the servant's attitude. I stole a glance at Lania. Even cheerful Lania seemed very off. And whenever I wanted to ask what had happened, Lania would always put on an obviously strained expression and answer with a forced smile that it was nothing. What on earth happened? If there's anything I can help with, I will. At that, Lania stopped what she was doing, then lowered her head and said, "Monsters have appeared in Appleton. The Empire has seen monsters often lately, but Appleton never had them before." That name did sound a little familiar. I felt like I had seen it in the novel. Appleton wasn't far from the ducal estate. So many people had family there. Lania continued speaking, and I immediately asked, "Do you have family there too?" Lania answered in a low voice, "My whole family is there." I immediately stood and hugged her, comforting her. "It'll be all right. It'll definitely be all right. Is the disaster severe? Everyone is trying their best to stop it, but there aren't many people who can drive monsters away, other than the Duke. Lania said, the monsters around Gloom Island grow by feeding on evil demonic energy. They possess tremendous regenerative power and destructive force. That is why people who are not strong enough have a hard time killing them. The most troublesome thing about monsters is their ability to recover. Even if they suffer severe injuries, they heal very quickly. The only way to kill a monster is to take it down in a single blow. But landing a fatal blow is easier said than done. Except for one person, Claude. Appleton's situation was dire. If it were not for the monsters, that damned regenerative ability alone would have been hard enough to deal with. But in the novel, the first prince drove the monsters away with ease. Why was that again? It seemed to have something to do with Appleton, right? I remembered where Appleton first appeared. Lania, don't worry. I'll solve this for you. Meanwhile, Henry was reporting Appleton's situation to Claude. A monster named Drake had suddenly changed its route a week ago. It had stopped in Appleton. Even though Appleton was not supposed to be on the monster's path, it had suddenly changed course. Henry said they still had not discovered the reason. Claude tapped the table as he thought, then asked, what about the damage? Henry immediately replied that, so far, there was no major problem. Claude looked irritated. The defenses were still holding for now, but how long could that last? Why had a mid-level monster like Drake appeared so suddenly? In the end, Claude stood and gave his order. Have the knights stand by. I'll lead the expedition myself. Henry accepted the command at once and turned to make the necessary arrangements. Claude paced alone through his office in frustration. Seeing no one around, I slipped into Claude's office in a flash. Claude jumped when he saw me, then quickly recovered. Good timing. I have something to tell you. I'll be leaving for a while, he said, leaning closer. How long? I asked. I don't know, but I won't break my promise to you. I'll come back as soon as possible. Claude swore it. I had thought he would ask to extend the deadline, because he had to leave. After all, there was no knowing when he would return. But I had come here for a reason too. I got straight to the point. I'm going to Appleton too. What? Claude was startled. I said I'm going to Appleton. The same place you're going. Ignoring his shock, I repeated myself. If you just want to come with me, then give it up. Even if I can't make it back by the deadline I promised. Even if you leave me, I won't resent you. I cut off his wild speculation. No, Claude immediately pressed. Then what is it? I turned my head away, unable to look at his stricken face, and said, because there's something I want. It was something I couldn't tell him about, something I had to retrieve. It held enough value to completely change the current situation. I had to go, as long as I could find it. The magic sword capable of killing a monster in a single strike. More precisely, I was going to meet the only person who could make that magic sword. Nova, the legendary blacksmith of Appleton. In the book, the first prince first met Nova in Appleton. After that, Nova became a legendary master smith. But that was in the future. Right now, Nova was still just a wandering blacksmith. Rather than a blacksmith, he was more like an inventor. He was always trying to create new kinds of weapons, but most of them ended in failure. That was why people only called him a vagrant smith. But in the end, he succeeded. The legendary magic sword that could sweep through monsters with a single swing. The first prince first discovered the value of the magic sword while secretly investigating evidence of Claude's rebellion. So rather than letting that scoundrel of a first prince have it, I would use it to save Lania's hometown, Appleton. I'm going with you. I won't get in your way. I'll stay somewhere safe. I laid out my sincerity to Claude. So, can I? I looked at Claude with forced, hopeful eyes. Claude clearly was not moved. Whatever you want, I'll bring it back for you. I really won't get in your way, Claude. I continued to insist. Claude pressed a hand to his forehead helplessly. Aila, you don't know how dangerous it is there. We've been holding the line, but it could be breached at any moment. Appleton could become a pile of ruins. Claude looked at me seriously. I absolutely won't go anywhere there's fighting. I'll stay in a safe city. I continued my argument. And I won't have many enemies there. Besides, if the Duchess accompanies you, it might raise Appleton's morale. Claude blocked my advance again. No, just stay where you are. After saying that, he left, not wanting to hear another word from me. But would I give up that easily? Of course not. In the middle of the night, I knocked on Claude's door. Claude, it's me. I knocked, then pushed the door open without waiting. Why are you here instead of sleeping? Claude sat up and asked. You walked away before we finished talking. And after that, you avoided me, I accused. I walked to his bedside and plopped down. I'm definitely going to Appleton. Until you say yes, I'm not leaving. For Claude, for Lania, and for everyone else, I had to go. Claude hated anyone disturbing his sleep more than anything. He wouldn't be able to outlast me, right? Claude Sunde del place. Throwing a tantrum won't work either. What husband would agree to let his wife go somewhere that dangerous? Go back. Why are you sitting on the floor? I ignored him and crossed my arms. If me sitting here makes you uncomfortable, then just say fine. Let's go together. Claude fell silent for a moment. Then he pulled up the blanket, turned his back to me, and lay down. Absolutely not. Stop wasting your time. Go back. Nothing could defeat me. I sat there stubbornly and seriously. An hour later, my anger was through the roof. The floor was freezing, my body was trembling, and that old mule had actually fallen asleep. Claude, I shouted. Did you really fall asleep? How can you sleep at a time like this? Claude stayed motionless with his back to me. I would not back down. Just you wait, I thought bitterly as I hugged my shivering body. Meanwhile, Claude, who had only been pretending to sleep, quietly opened his eyes. Wondering why it had gone so quiet, he turned back and saw that I had fallen asleep. Claude suddenly threw off the blanket and sat up, then got out of bed and walked over to me, muttering, "You really are an impossible woman." Then he carefully lifted me up. He gently laid me on the bed and murmured, "How could I ever win against you?" The next morning, the moment I opened my eyes, a question came to mind. Why was I in bed? I climbed up and looked over and saw Claude shivering on the floor. Claude looked pale, with dark circles under his eyes. In a weak voice, he asked, "Did you sleep well?" Then he stood up with difficulty and said, "Go back to your room. I need to wash up." I hurriedly apologized, embarrassed. Seeing Claude in such a weakened state, how could I possibly bring up Appleton again? I could only leave while saying we would talk later. But just as I was about to go, Claude's voice came from behind me. "You win, Aila." I spun around, hardly daring to believe I'd heard him right. Claude kept his face turned away, cheeks red, and said, "If you promise not to leave the guard side, I'll let you come." It really was what I thought. My wish had come true. I never imagined that stubborn mule would actually give in one day. I broke into a bright smile and promised again and again that I would be careful. Thank you, Claude. Time passed, and at last the morning came when we would leave for Appleton. The two guards Claude had assigned came to greet me. The black-haired knight Jenny's and the blonde knight Rosen. Standing beside me, Claude instructed the knights, "No matter what happens, protect Aila. From this moment on, her safety comes first." Then Claude came over and warned me again. "Aila, you absolutely must not go anywhere dangerous. If you get hurt, I can't promise what I might do." I smiled and agreed, "Of course. I don't want to get hurt either. I hate pain and sickness the most. Let's go." Claude helped me into the carriage. At last, I could go to Appleton. Although the process had been difficult, I looked at the two knights outside the carriage. Claude had said they were both highly skilled. Wasn't it a bit of a waste to place experts like them at my side? Jenny's noticed my gaze and turned back to ask if I needed something. I hadn't expected his senses to be so sharp, so I awkwardly turned away and said I was only looking around. I should focus on how to get the magic sword instead. As soon as we arrived, the local people were already waiting at the border. When they saw Claude arrive, it was as if they had seen their savior. And when I stepped out of the carriage, even more murmurs rose up. I awkwardly greeted them. Claude glanced into the distance, then turned back to me and said, "Aila, I'm going to inspect the situation. You absolutely must not do anything dangerous, understood? I'm leaving now." I smiled and said goodbye to Claude, who kept looking back at me every few steps. As soon as he was gone, Rosen came right over and asked where our next destination would be. He recommended that I first go to the place Claude had arranged for me to stay. I refused the suggestion and decided to head straight for the blacksmith shop. Nova was fairly well known among blacksmiths. If we looked in a few places, we should be able to find him. Compared to me, a complete newcomer here, Jenny's and Rosen, who had traveled all over with Claude, surely knew Appleton much better. So when I asked where the nearby blacksmith shops were, Rosen immediately said, "I come to Appleton often. Trust me." "Then let's go," I said happily. Appleton's smithing is excellent. I bought things here before. "Madam, you got a good eye. If you want to see weapons, there's one place I recommend. Listening to Rosen chatter on, I decided to first check out the place he recommended. But such a large workshop did not seem like the sort of place where Nova, the so-called wandering smith, would be. Why has the Duchess come here? The blacksmiths hurriedly stood at attention and greeted me. I immediately put on the proper dignity expected of a duchess and said, "You are all working very hard." One of the blacksmiths scratched his head and said, "All we can do is forge weapons and contribute in that way. But now that the Duke is here, there's no need to worry." "So, madam, what would you like to buy?" the blacksmith asked. Finally, the right question. I immediately said, "I want to meet Nova." The blacksmith jumped. "Madam, that man is useless. Forgive my boldness, but you'd be better off finding someone else. If you're dissatisfied with us, I can introduce you to other smiths. But Nova really won't do." The blacksmith hurriedly explained. It seemed Nova truly wasn't well regarded, but I absolutely had to find him. Jenny suddenly stepped in front of me and said sharply, "Do you think Madam is joking with you? Anyone here who knows where Nova is, step forward." Facing the silent crowd, Jenny's repeated darkly, "No one knows." Only then did someone say, quietly, "At the old smithy in the alley." Delighted, I took the two knights and headed there, rushing toward the legendary future master smith. As expected, the shabby old smithy everyone knew about, it really was broken down and gloomy. Even Rosen asked me again if I truly meant to go in. Of course I did. The moment I pushed open the door, someone called out, "Who is it?" The moment I saw him, I knew it was him, the future legendary blacksmith. Nova stopped Jenny's from making him bow and said, "Hello, Nova. I want to ask you to make something for me. A magic sword. Money is no issue. Whatever you want, I'll pay it." Nova froze for a moment, then shook his head repeatedly. "I can't do it." "Can't? Why?" I asked. Nova blushid avardly. "Because I don't know how. No blacksmith knows how to make a magic sword." So that was the problem. I immediately said, "I know how to make one." Nova instantly replied, "If you know how, why come to me? There are many blacksmiths in Appleton who are better than I am." I remained calm and continued, "You want to create a new kind of weapon that has never existed before, don't you? A legendary weapon that will make your name remembered forever. I'll help you. Just follow my instructions." Nova looked puzzled after hearing me out and asked why I had chosen him. "Because your sensitivity to magic is exceptional," I told him honestly. I leaned in close and whispered in his ear, "Fuse a sword with a mana stone, and you can make a magic sword. The only person who can do that is you." Who would have thought it? The method for making the legendary magic sword was surprisingly simple. All it required was combining a mana stone with a sword. The only difficulty was that the mana stone had to be cut with extreme precision. Some mages simply shattered mana stones to absorb their power, which was why mana stones were sold to them at such high prices. But the only person who could fuse a mana stone into another object without destroying it was Nova, the genius with extraordinary magical sensitivity. The novel mentioned that if Nova had been born with the ability to use magic, he would have become an unmatched mage. Unfortunately, he could only sense magic, not use it. But that was not his only gift. Because he had spent so much time helping his grandfather forge iron as a child, Nova had mastered the most reliable method of integrating mana stones into swords. Not only did he understand the principles, he also knew how to build on them. After endless trial and error, Nova finally succeeded in creating the magic sword. Then the first prince quickly took the sword. As the only person who had believed in Nova, the first prince managed to claim the magic sword. And because the sword's power was immense, it rapidly turned the first prince into a formidable force. Unlike ordinary wounds, monsters could not heal injuries inflicted by a magic sword. That made the magic sword the perfect weapon against large monsters. And the prince who had gathered the only person capable of making such weapons to his side finally began to rise, establishing the foundation of his position. The reason Claude lost to the first prince was also tied to the magic sword. The magic sword did not belong only to the first prince. I was going to change this story. The first person to discover Nova's worth would no longer be the first prince. It would be me. I did not know how the story would change, but the protagonist had already strayed far from the original plot anyway. I did feel a little sorry for the first prince, but that sword was the key to how he destroyed the ducal house. As a member of the ducal family destined for the chopping block, I cannot just stand by and do nothing. Once I made up my mind, I stretched out my hand in invitation. So, Nova, can we make a deal? I looked at Nova confidently. Nova had to become my person. Nova took my hand and agreed. But if I fail, you won't punish me, right? He asked awkwardly. Of course not. After all, I'm the one making an unreasonable request. I promise. I'll be counting on you from here on. Whatever you need, I'll provide it. I raised the money in my hand. Nova, failure is not an option. Nova took the money and hurried into the storeroom. Panting, he came back carrying an armful of blueprints and materials. Then he immediately began sketching furiously. So this was what a genius looked like. In the middle of it all, Nova looked up and called to me. Then he said awkwardly, because this will require many rounds of testing, I'll need a lot of expensive mana stones. I had thought it was something serious. I told you, I'll give you whatever help you need. I can even supply all the remaining mana stones in Appleton. Don't worry. Seeing the look of admiration in Nova's eyes, I felt a little embarrassed. That overbearing rich person attitude just now must have rubbed off on me from Claude. Oh, right. Can a mana stone be fused onto a finished product? I interrupted Nova, who was still writing furiously. The process of integrating mana stones was complicated. It would be even better if they could be attached to a completed weapon. After all, the sooner the magic sword was finished, the sooner, even if by a single second, we could drive the monsters away. I'm not sure, but I have a half-finished sword. If you allow it, I'd like to try turning it into a magic sword. Nova proposed uncertainly. Naturally, I agreed. Nova said happily, I haven't touched that sword in a long time. It always felt like it was missing something. It wasn't until I met you, madam, that I realized what it lacked. I smiled knowingly. A mana stone. I'll send over the mana stones. If it isn't enough, just ask at any time. And if you need extra hands, feel free to hire them yourself. I arranged. Then I leaned in and quietly added, I'll cover all production costs. If you succeed, I'll pay you double. Nova cried out in shock, D-double. A Pelton situation is urgent. You know that, right? I hope you can succeed as soon as possible. I added. I look forward to seeing the finished product. After saying goodbye to the excited Nova, I walked back out. Rosen asked what exactly I was doing. I told him honestly, if it succeeds, the strongest weapon will be born. If it failed, it would not really change anything. Rosen, don't interrupt. Jenny's cut in before Rosen could say more. Rosen shrugged, smiling. I stopped their bickering. Next, we go to Pelton's largest shop and buy mana stones. Deliver every last one to Nova. By the time I finally sat down on the bed, after a whole day of running around, exhaustion swept over my entire body. With Claude gone, it was a little lonely. He had to inspect the defenses, command the fighting, and even find a place for me to stay. He must be very busy. Claude must not get hurt. I let out a deep sigh. This was so worrying. Wait, worrying? I patted my cheeks. Why was I worrying about him? I looked out the window to distract myself, but then the thought suddenly surfaced again. He won't get hurt, right? I scratched my head in frustration. Why do I keep thinking about Claude? Stop thinking about him. This is so annoying. Why is this happening? I could feel my heart pounding and heat rising to my cheeks. This was strange. 4 days later, Nova sent word asking me to come to his workshop. The moment we met, Nova practically threw himself at me in excitement. How did you know? How did you know how to make a magic sword? This is practically revolutionary. That's a secret. I brushed it aside and asked about the progress. Nova said cheerfully that everything was going very smoothly. Then he ran excitedly to the storeroom to show me the finished product. So this is the sword. How far along is it? I asked, looking at it. How far along is it? Nova repeated my words, then burst into laughter. I stopped Jenny's, who seemed ready to treat Nova like a madman. Nova stopped laughing too and declared solemnly, this is the magic sword. I was stunned. Already, Nova nodded. Yes, this is the finished product. It is the greatest masterpiece I will ever create in my life. I picked up the magic sword and once again marveled at Nova's talent. Even I can't believe I actually made a magic sword, Nova said in wonder. Nova, you're incredible. I praise him honestly. Nova immediately became shy. I pointed at him and repeated firmly, that's right. You're incredible, Nova. From this day on, you are the legendary blacksmith who forged the magic sword. I will fully support you and give you anything you want. So now I formally invite you. Would you like to work for the ducal house? I looked at Nova. I was going to change Nova's fate. If I want to twist the plot of the novel, I might as well start by poaching a key figure. In the novel, Nova was the first prince's personal blacksmith. So what? The victor was the one who seized the initiative first. With tears in his eyes, Nova said, I will devote myself wholeheartedly to serving you, madam. Heh, great. The perfect ace was mine now. On the battlefield, overrun by monsters. Claude was still fighting. With one swing of his blade, a monster fell dead in a single strike. The knights beside him could only stare in shock. Ordinary knights struggled just to leave a wound on a monster, yet Claude could cut them down effortlessly. No matter how often one heard of his reputation, it was still enough to leave anyone shaken. Soon, a scout knight brought news. The monsters were retreating. Only then did Claude and the other knights lower their swords. Claude wiped the blood from his face and said, There are far too many monsters. Something is wrong. One of the nearby knights hurriedly said, It's the first time we've ever seen so many drakes. That's why we requested the Duke's aid. And yet you still don't know when so many drakes appeared or where they came from. Does that make any sense? Then there are only two possibilities. Either the Knights of Appleton are too incompetent to notice even the trail of a drake, or Drake's movements were so covert that not even Appleton's patrol knights could detect them. That's enough. Go rest. Claude waved the knights away. The longer this battle dragged on, the worse it would be for them. Just then, Rosen came up to him. Claude first looked surprised, then immediately demanded, Why are you here? I distinctly ordered you not to leave Aila's side for even a moment. Claude's brows drew together. Rosen quickly said, Madam wishes to see you. Aila wants to see me? Did something happen to her? Claude asked urgently. Rosen grinned and said, Of course not. Jenny's and I protected her thoroughly. Claude snorted coldly. It had better be that way. If anything happens to Aila's safety, you two had better pray I kill you myself. At those words, Rosen's smile vanished at once. Claude, still in his armor, immediately prepared to follow Rosen back. Rosen quickly reminded him, Your Grace, you're injured, aren't you? Claude froze. With his back still turned, he said, When I was dealing with the monsters, it was just a scratch. Looking at Claude's stubborn back, Rosen muttered, Just a scratch? I waited in the room, listening to the approaching footsteps and wondering whether it was the person I wanted to see. Then, with a creak, someone pushed the door open. The Claude I had been waiting for arrived. Thank you for coming, and I'm sorry for calling you so suddenly. I quickly walked over to him. Dark circles, bandages. Claude looked exhausted, but he was still trying not to let me notice. So I went straight to the point. I have something to give you. Claude asked in confusion. To me, I handed him the magic sword. Claude looked puzzled. But your first gift to me? I didn't expect it to be a sword. Claude looked a little shy. Thank you, Aila. My face heated up again. Unfair. I turned my head away, unable to keep looking at that devastatingly handsome smile. Really? Claude lifted the sword and examined it carefully. I like it. It's a fine sword. Very soon, he noticed what made it different. Is that a mana stone on it? It's a magic sword, I explained. Claude looked shocked. A magic sword? The one from the legends. That's right. So, do you want to try it? I suggested. The moment the words left my mouth, the sword in Claude's hand lit up. Depending on the user's strength, the aura formed from magic power would vary in range, intensity, and duration. The aura before me had a huge range and a deep, rich color. Claude really was strong. Claude gave the sword 2 experimental swings and asked, Is this aura? I answered too quickly. Yes. Aura can easily suppress monsters, and monsters can't heal wounds caused by aura either. I see. Claude asked suspiciously. How do you know that? I made up an excuse on the spot. I read it in an old book at the Count's house. Whether he believed it or not, Claude only smiled faintly. I see. But when he opened his eyes again, he suddenly felt his body sway. His vision began to blur. I was just saying that this was why I had called him here, to give him this gift. With this sword, killing monsters would become much easier. Then I saw the spreading stain of blood rising across his chest. I looked up at him in shock. Claude, as if he himself had not noticed, asked, What's wrong? I pulled open the collar and bandages at his chest. His clothes beneath were soaked with blood. Claude called my name, still trying to explain. But before he could finish, he swayed and collapsed. My heart stopped for a moment. Claude, I screamed.